And I will say, open our hearts and minds and spirits, many in the one, to receive new ideas. Give us the courage to ask good questions. Guide us to share the tips and tricks we have found useful in our own practices. And thank you for the process that nurtures our souls. Bless Sina and her memory for gifting us with this process. Bless Kylea and Jim and all those who protect and the process and lead us on the way. Bless all the Soul Collage facilitators around the globe and all of our trainers. And bless Anne Marie for the work she does and the guidance she provides through kaleidasoul.com. We're grateful for this time to share together and for the many, many gifts and ways that Soul Collage has blessed our lives. May it be so. Okay, now my screen is black and I'm just in a little box at the bottom, Anne Marie, if that is the way it's supposed to be.
Can you not see me?
I can see you, but you had disappeared.
Okay. Am I still there? I don't know how to make it go.
You are there. You are there. Yeah.
I'm here.
Yes. So, okay. I thought that we would start from sort of an organic position of talking about when we make a card, we start with the card stock. And so some of us use these cards that are available through soulcollage.com. Some people are really crafty and able to cut their own mat boards. Every time I've tried to cut a mat board, I've donated more than a little bit of skin and blood. So it's much easier for me to use the 5x8 mat boards that are available. I know that some folks started making cards before they had any kind of specific training, and they make their cards in 5x7 because that's what made sense to them as an artist. And I know that some folks make their cards digitally. And so I would just like to ask, what are the materials and sizes that you use? And does anybody do anything more unique than using the 5x8 format?
I know there's a facilitator somewhere in the world that makes her cards on CDs. So she has a round deck.
Oh, cool.
I know, isn't that cool? I was thinking it would take up a lot of space, but I don't know. But it's different.
They're not that much thicker than the mat boards.
I get you're right.
And the me cards that they do recommend with kids, they often use half of a manila folder, so it's more of an 8x10 size, because often kids work in a little bit bigger format better than they do. So
yeah, if you like the 5x7 format, Staples sells index cards in 5x7. And there's no reason why you can't make your cards on index cards or cardstock and then laminate them to protect them.
Right.
So I know some people have done that.
Yeah. And then the next thing is, we're in the process, as we make a card, we glue it. And I started off using rubber cement. And here's a card I made with rubber cement, and I don't know if you can see, but it sort of bled through the image of what's on the reverse. And let me give you a little bit of a close-up. You can see the splotchiness on her face. And so that's one of the things that happens sometimes with rubber cement. It is a very forgiving glue, and some people are highly allergic to the toxic smell, but this is sometimes what happens with rubber cement. I then began to use the Pioneer glue, which I really liked because of the consistency of it and the rectangular shape of the edge, which kind of goes back and forth across for the card. So that's the Pioneer glue that's available through soulcollage.com. And then Anne Marie introduced me to this, it's going to be backwards, the Cochina.
No, it's correct. I can see it straight.
You can see it? Okay, on my thing it's backwards. The Cochina glue, which has just a delightful smell, and smells sort of like coconuts. And it also is a little wetter than the Pioneer glue. And so it's sometimes a little bit more forgiving, that you can take something up carefully and reposition it right away. So that's a benefit for some of us.
It's made from almond paste. It's
Almonds,
made in
that's what it
Italy.
smells like.
Made from
Almonds, not
almond paste.
coconut.
And it's non-toxic. So
Yeah.
for those of you that don't like the rubber cement, we do sell these on Kaleidosol. You just have to put like glue stick in the search box and the page will come right up.
Yeah. So often when people first start to do collage work, they often will grab glue that's available, like at Michael's, or thinking, well, I got something that's acid free. But a lot of the other paper glues have too much water content in them, and you get a lot of wrinkles, and sometimes things will then rip when they get wet. So I really like the Pioneer glue and the Cochina glue. What other kinds of glues do people use?
I have this, it's a Scotch repositionable glue stick.
Oh, cool.
And it's kind of like these are made with the same kind of glue, only they're little sticky dots that you, if you're having a card with a lot of pieces to lay out, it helps you to then you can move them around without worrying about it sticking. These things are made from the same kind of substance that's on the back of Post-it notes, so you can pick it up and move it and pick it up and move it. So those are a couple other options. If anybody would like to, I'm wondering, Dot, since there's only 5 of us here, if I could, if anybody would mind if we turn on all the videos so we can see everybody, and then people won't have to keep coming in and out. What do you think?
See if it works.
All right. I'm going to invite you all to share your video, and then you can, oh, wait a minute. Did I do it? Evelyn Trudy. Oh, there's more people. You can stop your video by, there should be a stop video button on the bottom of your screen. If you don't want us to see you, that's fine. So now that you're all here, and you can also click the mute button, there should be a little microphone on the bottom if you want to hold something up and share. It will make this a sharing circle since it's a nice small group. We were worried there would be like 20 people on the screen and it would be hard to focus. So we're on glue. So does anybody have a glue that they want to share? Even if you just tell us about it, if you don't have it, you want to unmute yourself. Or you could raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Evelyn, hi, you're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I ordered a kit, so I just got this Scotch. I believe I got the. Do you sell kits at Kaleidoscope?
Yeah, we sell workshop in a box.
I can't speak. Kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ordered that kit.
Oh, good.
And yeah, I'm very excited about getting involved. I signed up for my first meeting, Soul Collage meeting, and it got canceled the night before because the facilitator had some health issue with someone in her family. So I still have not gotten my hands on a live workshop, but I've made a few cards, and there's not many people, there's not many facilitators in my area. So they're all like at least a 2-hour drive from me. I live in New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
They are all way down on the coast, on the beach.
Right.
And it would be like a 2-hour drive, and they hold their classes in the evening. So I jumped on this chance to get on the Zoom.
Yeah, no, this is good community right here. Is it closer for you to look for facilitators in the city instead of New Jersey?
I'm sorry?
Would it be closer for you to find a facilitator in New York instead of New Jersey?
That's what I did.
Or I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about New Jersey on the shore.
Initially, when I first looked, that's all there were. But the woman that I had scheduled, my pastor and myself, we were going to go to a workshop with her, and she's in New York. She was in White Plains, New York.
Okay, yeah.
And she had to cancel it the last minute.
There are also some facilitators in Eastern Pennsylvania, if you're close enough to cross the border into Pennsylvania.
Like, can you name some towns? I have a friend who lives in Easton. I was just in Easton the other day.
Yeah, well, there are some folks around the Philadelphia area,
So-
Cherry Hill, Easton,
Ooh,
Reading, I
okay.
think. Yeah.
So Evelyn, what I would do is go to soulcollage.com.
I did.
Click
Yeah.
on that, find a facilitator, and then try Pennsylvania and see. There's
Okay.
a few.
I did, but I looked at New Jersey, so I'll look at
Okay.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Good. I'm
Yeah.
glad you shared that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions for gluing?
And then the next session,
Wait a minute. Dot. Trudy,
go ahead.
Trudy raised her hand, but you need to. Oh, wait a minute. See, I don't see you on my little list here, so you need to unmute yourself. Oh, there you
Yes,
go.
I'm unmuted. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have no, not a glue like you showed. I haven't found it in Holland. I have this one.
What is it?
It's a round glue stick and it has no solvent in it and it doesn't smell. So it agrees with me.
And where are you from?
I'm from the Netherlands.
Oh, great. Welcome.
And it's evening and I can't find a good light here. I'm a bit in the dark. You
That's
can
all
see
right.
me.
We can see you fine.
Yes.
Thank you, Trudy.
Does the glue have a name?
No, not really. No,
Okay,
no. It's just glue stick.
glue stick, okay.
Yes.
And does it work well for you?
It works very well for me, but when I see the quadrant, or how do you call it?
The rectangle.
The rectangle form, I think that's much easier to work with.
Yes, yeah, it is very
Yeah.
easy to work with. Yeah.
Maybe I have to go to a shop with painters,
Art supplies.
art
Yeah.
supplies. Yes, that's what
Yeah,
I
you
mean.
can, like everything else, you can get it on Amazon.
I
and
don't
you-
have a credit card. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I can't buy on Amazon. No,
You can't. Yeah.
no.
So, yeah.
But I will find it. Yes.
Okay. As long as you have something that works.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so then we have cutting techniques or scissors, and one of the things I use when I've watched people really struggle to cut out a background and then glue it on the card. And what I find is if I put the glue on the card and then put the background over it with just about a half an inch or at least a quarter of an inch bigger than the card, then I can use heavy scissors. And these happen to be heavy dressmaker scissors that my mom had. And they work really well to go along the edge and cut the extra material off, the extra paper. Some people will use a rotary cutter like this or an X-Acto knife. And they are also the kinds of things that some people are really adept at using, and others of us see them as almost lethal weapons. So some people will use a rotary cutter and cut along the edges with the rotary cutter, and that works really well for them. Some people cut their backgrounds about 1/8 of an inch smaller than the 5x8 card and then glue it. And then when they glue it on the card, they either glue it on the colored side of the card or on the white side of the card, and it creates its own little frame around the image. So that's a way that some people work with the images and the size of the cards.
Oh, I was trying to find an example. Oh, well, that's all right.
I also have found that here's a card I made quite a few years ago, and I use it as an example where I'm fascinated with fossils, And if you look in the background, there are fossils. This was a background that was in Architectural Digest of somebody's countertop that they would put in their kitchen. And I cut it out because I love the crinoid fossils. Put it on the card, and it lived just as a background on the card for several years. And then one day I was looking through the Smithsonian magazine, and this Madonna, also thought to perhaps be a female Buddha, showed up in exactly the same colors, and she lives just perfectly well on the background. So sometimes the background comes first, other times we find the image first, and then we need to look for a background that will work really well with the card.
Keep that up for a minute, and let me just tell people, if you've not been on Zoom before, up in the upper right there should be little buttons that say speaker view and gallery view. And if you click on speaker view, all you will see is the person who's speaking full screen. So if you click on that, you can see that card like bigger. I saw some of you like trying to see it, so I don't know if you knew about that. Just a little tip for Zoom.
I don't have that on my screen, Anne-Marie. I don't know. There's you, and then there's a little box with me and a plus sign and a minus sign. Now, I don't know if I hit the plus sign adds all the other people. That's
the
great.
plus sign then is gallery view.
Okay, gallery view.
And the minus sign would be just the person who's speaking.
Who's speaking,
So
okay.
you can use that if somebody else holds up a card. Yeah.
Okay.
A little Zoom trick.
Yeah.
Trick for Zoom.
Oh, okay, there we go. All right. So another thing I have is a scrapbook pair of scissors, and it's called a deckled edge. And the deckled edge makes a sort of a pinking shear edge, but it's an uneven one. And so you can see it around the outside of the border. And I had a friend who was a landscape architect, and he says, nature abhors straight lines, and we often think that, when we're drawing and all that, I can't draw a straight line even with the ruler. And so I find that I like a deckled edge better than I do a straight line. And here's another one with a deckled edge and a frame around it. You can see how it creates a little bit different. So what other kinds of cutting tools have people found useful?
So this isn't cutting, but this is ripping. So
Tearing, yes.
it makes kind of like a deckled edge, but it's kind of wilder.
Yeah.
And it's kind of very satisfying to do that. Some cards, like I think my angry card has some ripped edges on it. This is my want to give up card, the part of me sometimes that wants to give up. And I had great satisfaction ripping that out. And for me, it makes a difference of the energy of the card that I ripped it out instead of cutting them out. I don't know.
Can you hold that up again, Anne-Marie?
Oh, yeah.
See the white lines that are created by the tearing? Different papers that have different thicknesses for different magazines. Sometimes if you tear up, you get the white line, and sometimes if you tear down, you get the white line. So you sort of have to experiment with it to see whether you get a white line or you don't get a white line, whether you want a white line or you don't want a white line. But tearing is very satisfying and creates a very unique edge.
And if you didn't want if I didn't want the white line, I could have like put a marker over it or smudged some, scrapbook ink or something. But I kind of liked it.
Yeah. Okay. Any other cutting or tearing strategies?
I've seen people use manicure scissors, or those little tiny when you're cutting little tiny images. Yeah. They sell them in the art supply stores called cutter bees, I think. Yeah. But manicure scissors have that sharp point, and they're very tiny.
Here comes
Val has
scissors.
I had a comment on the ripping. I've done the white and the not white and place by ripping down and then back. I'll show it to you what it is. So I'm doing it forward and then back and then forward. And so you can see part of it's got the white, part of it doesn't. So you can depending on which way you rip, up or down.
Yeah,
You can get both.
very creative.
That's a cool idea. Val, did you want to add something?
Just that the cutter bees that I've really enjoyed. I usually get them at Michael's when there are 40% off coupons
Yes.
because they're an investment. But if you get enough coupons and keep buying them, you have enough for a whole workshop. So I find them, well, they can be lethal. You have to be careful. Those people who are not good with scissors, I have to always warn them that they're sharp.
Yeah.
I like them a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Some people use the smaller scissors when they're cutting a really detailed kind of an edge. And other people find that they're not quite as concerned about a detailed edge, and they'll cut a wider margin around a large image. Like if you're trying to cut, somebody's 5 fingers out, and you're cutting very carefully through this, that takes a lot of time and patience. And some of us don't have that when we're making cards. And so you could cut big mitten around the hand or just a big circle. And I remember when I was in training with Sina, she would walk around the group and she would remind us, women, she'd say, or ladies, because it was usually all women, this is not an art project. This is to create something that will call to mind the image and the message and the wisdom that you're putting on your card. And it's like, what do you mean it's not an art project? Well, of course it's an art project, Some of us really get into that dynamic of the art project and spend a lot of time cutting things out into detail and laying things out very specifically and being very careful about colors matching or coordinating or contrasting kind of thing. And I have to remind myself that it's really about the wisdom of the image speaking to me on the card and not so much what it looks like. So
I'll add something to that. When I attended my first workshop, the workshop facilitator was named Noelle, and she told us that when she's cutting out an image like Dot just described, a tiny, and it takes a long time, that she thought of it as blessing the image. So she made it kind of into a meditative practice, instead of just like thinking about the weather or watching TV, she did it mindfully and was blessing the image as she did it. I always remembered that. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that's, I say to folks sometimes, I compare soul collage and images to like heating your house with wood. You go out into the woods and you chop down a tree and you get warmed, and then you cut up the tree and haul it home and you get warmed, and then you carry the wood into the house and you get warmed, and then you finally put the wood into the fireplace or the furnace and you get warmed again. So when I'm looking at print images in a magazine or in junk mail, I'm allowing those images to talk to me in a way that is meditative if I'm doing it in a mindful sort of way. And then if I decide to save an image or harvest the image, that's another part of the process. And then when I decide I'm going to make a card with an image and start with an image, again, it's that it speaks to me at a lot of different levels over and over and over again. And that's one of the things I really value about the process. Okay, wanted to talk a little bit about sources of images. I think one of the best gifts to Soul Collage recently has been Catherine Anderson's copyright-free images in her books that she sells for $15 a piece. And she is a photographer par excellence and travels all over the world creating the images. They're available in the book either in larger format that the whole page will be an image, or 2 images on a page that just fit perfectly on a Soul Collage card, or half a page or quarter of a page image. So I really encourage you to take a look at those, particularly if you're facilitators and are concerned about having cards that you can display with copyright-free images on them and not have to worry about that. For a long time, we talked about uh, excuse me, fair use rules in copyright, and that as long as you were using the image for yourself and not copying it, it was okay from the copyright perspective. But then some Soul Collage facilitators would put their cards on a website, and the artist would discover their image that was a copyrighted image and go after them with a lawsuit and require them to take the image down. So if you're going to get into that process of posting things online or charging people to come to your workshops, then you really have to be much more careful about copyright-free images.
So Trudy, I think Trudy raised her hand there.
Yes.
Do you have a question, hon?
Could you say the name of this woman about the book again?
Yes, it's Catherine with a C, Catherine, and then Anderson, Anderson.
And if you go to Amazon and put in Catherine Anderson, there's also a romance writer named that who has tons and hundreds of romance novels. So if you put Catherine Anderson Soul Collage, books will come up. So don't get confused if you put Catherine Anderson and see romance.
Okay, thank you.
Instead of images.
And if
I made that mistake once.
I would imagine that Catherine, she lives in North Carolina, and if you sent her an email, which you can do through her website, and said, I'd like to order these books and I'll send you a check, since you don't have a credit card, that she would honor the check when it came and send things back to you. Okay. Other places that you find images that have been particularly helpful and useful for you.
I mean, when I was first starting out, I sent an email out to every human being within a 50-mile radius of me, and I got all kinds of goodies on my doorstep. So family and friends, don't overlook them. Co-workers, if you just put out a notice, you're collecting magazines, put a box by your desk or wherever you work. Any kind of an office that has a waiting room, they get their magazines free because the magazine people, the publishers send them out to them because they know they're not just going to reach the person running the hair salon, they're going to reach 500 people who come in and out of there every month. So ask at those places to save them for you and go pick them up every month. And my other advice about magazines is don't discriminate. Don't say you're only going to find good images in like Oprah and National Geographic. Go wild. Go get some sports magazines or some news magazines. Get some men's magazines and go think out of the box. Get some magazines you wouldn't ordinarily get when you go to the bookstore and see, because even the fashion magazines sometimes have really great emotive images when they can get their models to do that. So that's what I have to say about magazines. Oh, she's got one.
Another source is your own photographs. Ooh. When I had the opportunity to go to Dachau, I took these photographs and had saved them for years, and then decided that they would be a good background for Elie Wiesel, who was a survivor of the Holocaust. And so there are some Soul Collage Soul Collagers who only use their own photographs, and they find that just a very involving process to think about, that they want to make a card to represent a part of themselves or a member of their community, and then what photograph do I need to take in order to use that for my card. So using your own photographs is certainly an opportunity. And there are people who are phenomenal drawers and will also just draw an image when they want it. If they can't find an image, oh, I'd like a picture of a rabbit that has a red bow around its neck, and there it is. They can make it. Not all of us are gifted in that way, but if you are, or have a friend who is, they're often willing to make an image for you if you ask them for a specific image.
You can also use your own art as backgrounds. If you paint or do watercolor or mixed media art, you can use that as backgrounds for your cards too.
And you can also print images from the internet. This is Mother Teresa, And these are Google images that were available that I printed off on a pretty decent printer, and made a card to honor Mother Teresa. Okay. Another thing that I will talk about a little bit later on, what I call inclusions. This is a stamp, a postage stamp for Mother Teresa, and it just is another little thing to add to a card. Okay.
Just be careful when you're printing images from online because of the copyright issue Dot was talking about earlier.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
if it's your own deck and you're keeping it in your house and no one else is looking at it, that's fine. But if you start posting those kind of cards online, it could be a problem. Just keep that in mind when you're searching Google.
Yeah. Okay.
Allison has her hand up here. Let me unmute you. Oh, all right. There you go. Oh. Allison, can you unmute yourself? I think we maybe click the button at the same time. There you go. There you go.
Okay, there is a website called Pixabay. It's Pixabay, and you can download copyright-free images from that website. And I've also seen people use stickers.
Allison,
So, you get your packs of stickers, the kids' stickers, and people will use stickers.
can you turn your volume up a little bit? I had a hard time hearing you, but yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Try again.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. What I said was there's a website called Pixabay, Pixabay, and they have copyright-free images on Pixabay that you can download. And the other thing I've seen people use is stickers. You know, the packs of stickers that you can get?
Yes. Yes.
Stickers, yeah.
Yes.
What's the name of that one?
Stickers.
They're just
that you
stickers
would
that you
buy.
buy.
Allison, I'm going to ask you to type it in the chat box so we can all hear what you're saying. It's just a little garbled. It's probably your connection. Can you go into the chat box and type the link that you're saying? That would be really helpful. I like unsplash.com also for copyright-free images and free. I think I put, well, I put that link. Oh, I know. www.unsplash.com. So those of you that are live can see those links in the chat box. Pixabay. Anyone else about magazines or images? Allison is saying, I have seen people use stickers. Yes. And scrapbooking stores and art supply stores have some really cool ones these days. Judy?
I once listened to a soul collage class, and there was a woman who said she buys books secondhand, and she cuts images out of books, and that I was shocked about it, but now I do that too. Because you can buy in the library or something, or very cheap books, and then sometimes they have lovely images, and then yes, you use the images.
I've done the same thing. Trudy, I've done the same thing, and I held on to some, what they were was a museum had an exhibition of a particular artist, and so they published these booklets, kind of, not really like a hardbound book, but a softbound booklet that had full color plates, images of the artwork that was in the museum's show. These books were 20, 30 years old. So they were sitting on my shelf because I felt they were too precious for me to use. So I finally, here's one of my images. I got this from America Sat. I finally got the nerve to take my scissors to the book because the book was useless. I mean, it was sitting on my shelf, sandwiched in between. It was useless. So I get what you're saying. It was very nerve-wracking, but I finally did it.
Yes, yes.
And then it's very satisfying, don't you think? Yes.
Yeah, you can get used books like that at library book sales, yard sales, or tag sales, whatever they call them where you are. Really big bookstore chains like Barnes and Noble have a really big remainder section where they have books, you know, those big coffee table books. Someone here, I see Allison is sharing that stock calendars are great sources for images, and in January they're all really cheap at every store because they're trying to get rid of them. Let's see, Shutterstock. That's a website I believe Allison is sharing. I don't know where Dot went. She seems to have disappeared. Dot, come back. I don't know where she went, but we can keep on going. Anything else about, so far, for those of you who've just come in or came in late, we've covered map, you know, the board, the base for the cards, glue, scissors, cutting, and we were just on images. Does anybody have anything they want to add before we go on to the actual card making or laying out or children's book? Tracy is sharing, I have found children's books at yard sales, which are good for whimsical images. Children's books, yes, that's excellent. Photography books. There's a great, let's see, what's the name of it? Bookoutlet.com has, they sell those remainders at a really low price. And yeah, let's see, I can put that in here. But I have to put www. Book Outlet. That's another one. And Laura, if you would remind me which links we shared at the very beginning, I will add them into the chat box. Any other sharing before we go on to actual card making? Okay, so I like, when I'm like laying out a card, and I do use rubber cement and the Italian glue stick that smells like almonds because it's made from almond paste. But the rubber cement sometimes has bubbles in it, and I use like an old, I save the hotel card keys or old gift cards to smooth out. And you want to be careful though, sometimes it's good to put like a piece of wax paper over that, or parchment paper or something. Wax paper is probably the best so that you don't scratch the actual image. Let's see. Sometimes it's okay to, when you're laying out a card, it's okay to let some of the background show. Like I couldn't find a background to fill up the whole card, but I kind of like the green in the background. It's my archetypal crone card. So that's another trick, I guess. I don't know. And another thing to remember is you don't have to have the whole image on. It's okay to place an image off the edge. Like, see this here? All that was important to me, I couldn't fit, there was a woman in like a fancy apron pointing her finger, and I wanted her all on there, but there was no way for her to fit, plus get everything else in. This is my shamed child card. So I decided it was okay to just have, you know, the idea that that's a woman and the finger pointing. So, you know, sometimes if you're laying out a card and it all won't fit, you kind of have to judge what's the most important part of this, and what should I, what's really important, and what can I leave or take out or whatever. So positioning, you know, an image off the edge so all of it doesn't have to be seen. And then this community card that I made for my dad, I used photographs that I have taken of him, and I also used as part of the background some photocopies of some weavings that he did when he retired. He we bought him a loom because he wanted to weave. And I don't know, he was an accountant all his life, but he was always very artistic. And so I wasn't really surprised when he asked for a loom after he retired. And I also, so I copied some of that because that was really important to him and to all of us, because he would make us all these gifts of placemats and table runners and things. And I also photocopied some letters that he had written to me. If you click on speaker view, you can see it closer. But so I actually have his handwriting here. Actually, I don't even think I photocopied it. I think I used the real thing. So so if you're making community cards, it's kind of a cool thing to add more to the card, more meaning to the card.
I'm back, Anne Marie.
Oh, good. I don't see you though.
Well,
I hear you. Come on back. Let's
I
see.
think before you had to get me to join.
Yeah, yeah, I will get you back. Manage the participants. Dorothy. Here we go. We missed you. We moved on to other tips and tricks, and I've been sharing some of mine, so maybe you have some more to share. There you are. Welcome back.
Say thank you. You went on to what?
Just general card making tips.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't sure what your next topic was, but
well, I thought that I would talk more about inclusions, like you were just talking about. I have used sometimes cards that help me to remember an event I participated in that was particularly meaningful. And so here's a ticket stub and a picture of Pavarotti from the program, and just have always really loved his music and delighted that I got to see him perform several times when he was in good voice. And I also periodically make a card. I know that Sina has often talked about not putting words on cards, but this is a little poet who, Maddie Stepanek, who Oprah had invited on her show a number of times, had muscular dystrophy and subsequently passed on. But I photocopied his poem on a piece of overhead projector film and then cut it out. And so I can either have it on the card or or not. And this one I think I particularly glued on, or it's stuck on. So there are times when I think words are appropriate on our card, but we need to, particularly I think on community cards more than any other card. And another inclusion I have used is periodically I'll put a coin, whether it's a commemorative coin or one that I've gotten from a conference or something like that. And this is a card I made for Sacagawea, and this is the dollar coin for Sacagawea that's here in the middle. I also have a Susan B. Anthony card and a Susan B. Anthony dollar stuck to it. Okay. Others have used inclusions.
I didn't do this, but I saw somebody doing this once at a retreat or a training. She was making her Happy Child card, and she had something called Sparkle Mod Podge. So Mod Podge is like a clear adhesive that people use when they do decoupage and stuff, but this had glitter in it. It had like sparkles in it, and she put a really faint layer over it, and it added like a magical kind of quality to the essence of that card.
Yeah.
So Sparkle Mod Podge.
And here's one that has glitter in it that I have in a protective covering to keep the glitter in. And then there's an inclusion of a goddess charm that's here. So it's a spiral goddess, and so the glitter emphasizes the spirals. This is one of my favorite cards because it just looks so neat.
Allison is sharing that sometimes people use glitter pens.
Yes.
Markers that have the glitter right in it.
Or metallic pens that will add a shininess to something that you want to highlight.
Right.
And there are some facilitators who encourage their students to use a colored marker around the edges of their cards to help sort them into suits. So they may have a different color for each of the suits. Or I've also had some folks who have, because they see their cards as being sort of holy and sacred, they put a golden edge around all of their cards, which is appropriate as well. Okay.
I don't know what that was.
I want to talk a little bit about the images on cards. And when I started making cards, I found that I put lots and lots and lots and lots of images on one card. And I thought eventually it got really, many of my cards looked to me like they're very cluttered. And so then I experimented with some single image cards or some relatively simple cards that had 1 or 2 images on them. And that, I think, can be really useful for people. And I have a card here I'll take out of this. This is a single image card. You know, I have struggled with weight issues all my life. And here's a scale with instead of a number, the word joy. And so this is just a single image card for me in terms of, you know, be happy that you're alive and you're healthy and, you know, can live a dynamic life regardless of what weight you're at. So single image card that sort of tells its own story. I know, Anne Marie, you were talking about double image cards, or how simple images can really be striking with only 1 or 2 images. Did you have an example of that you wanted to share?
I have just shared some while you were gone, but I didn't share.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, I didn't share one of those though. I have a lot. That's kind of how I started, was making 2 image cards. Of course, I'm not gonna be able to pull one out of the deck right now. But
well, here's one for Rosa Parks.
well,
that is her picture, and then a picture of a younger African American girl. It's not her when she was younger, but it to me captures the image of growing up Black in America and the issues that people face with that. And when I first cut out this image of Rosa Parks, I thought, well, I have to get a picture of a bus from that era, and, you know, kind of very literal sort of things. And this, I think, is a card that just really speaks to me in terms of her and her personality.
I think for me, I like the 2 image cards because sometimes you get an image, you know, like this is all one image. Those people on the slab, that's all one image. And sometimes nothing else, I mean, something, I'm sorry about the bag. Woo. Sometimes images like that don't go with anything else. There was nothing else that I could find that went with it except a background. So that's why I like those 2 image cards. You take one image out of its context and put it on something else.
Yeah. Here's a 3 image card that is the background of Genesis, where we have our Kaleidosol retreats. And this is Sister Elizabeth, who is the leader of the order that's there. And she recently added chickens, hens, to the menagerie that's there, and they collect the eggs and use them in their food prep and meals. And so this is a background image from one of the Genesis publications, and her picture from that publication, and then a picture of chickens and hens I got from other places. So I think sometimes the simpler a card is, the more striking the message can be to me, and uncluttered kind of thing.
Allison has shared in the chat box that some people have spray painted foil for the background, and someone else is asking, what is spray, paint, or foil? And I don't know, so who's going to answer that? Allison. If we can't hear you, you might need to type it in the chat box, the answer, and I'll tell everyone. Because
or do you have an example?
Unless someone else knows what that is. Spray, paint, or foil. That sounds spray, paint. You spray it on and it looks like foil. I don't know, I'm just guessing. Oh, spray paint.
Comes in a can.
I'm going to let the dog back in just a minute. Keep going.
Some card makers have borrowed a lot of scrapbook kinds of techniques and materials from scrapbooking to incorporate into their cards. You know, cut out letters or words or images that sometimes are raised a little bit off the paper and can add things to that. So I think that wherever we can find images that speak to us is what we use, you know. Okay, would like to spend a little bit of time talking about the different suits. I know that lots of collagers never divide their deck into suits. They find that complicates things, and I find it very useful and meaningful to have my cards arranged in suits. And so if folks have examples of their committee cards that they would like to share, that would be something that we could encourage people to do at this point.
You might want to give a couple sentence description of what that is in case there are new people listening.
Okay. Committee is parts of ourselves, you know, the roles that we play in our lives. So you might be a mother, you might be a daughter, you might be a sister, you might be a grandmother, and that's all different parts of you. You might be a teacher, you might be a pet owner and have a dog or have always had a dog in your life. So those kinds of things that represent who you are in the world are the different kinds of images that would go on committee cards. So now you look like you had a moment of recognition that you wanted to share. Nope.
So this is the committee part of me that gets impatient.
That's great.
Oh, such a big part. And this is the committee part of me that likes, when I was little, I used to direct neighborhood plays and musicals, and now it's a part of me that likes to direct things and take charge and put things together. Just a couple. I have many. I don't want to share them all. Does anybody else bring committee cards?
I love to play dominoes. And so here's a card that's just full of dominoes. And this was in a page in a magazine that I had to cut apart and tape or paste back together in order for it to all fit on the card. And I spent quite a few years being a caregiver for my life partner who had dementia. And so this was the kind of the tightrope that you walk when you're a caregiver of someone who has needs, and you have to balance your needs and their needs.
Go ahead, Trudy. If you tip it sometimes, you know, if you tip it backwards maybe a little bit, there. That's nice. Hold still. Who is this netter?
That's my inner voice, or
look,
or my singing voice. I have a bit. I'm a bit shy in speaking out, and she represents that part of me. She's very much in herself, and she sings. And well, that's all I can tell about her at this moment. I'm sorry, I didn't pick up the foil. Oh, my English, it's horrible.
You're doing great.
Better than our Dutch.
Yes, that's what I believe, yes.
Yeah. Okay, anybody have another committee card that you'd like to share? Moving on then to community cards. These are cards that we make to honor and represent people and real animals that we have shared our lives with. Here is my Cena Frost card that has the Indra's web in the background and the book that she wrote initially, and the kind of the whole world of inner space that opens up through Soul Collage. So that was a Cena Frost card. They can be of people who are famous and in the public eye, or they can be something that you might make to honor your next door neighbor with whom you have an important relationship. They can be people with whom we have positive relationships, or they can be cards to represent people who may have presented challenges to us. Cena's advice was, with a complicated relationship, that you make only one energy per card, so that you might make a card, say you had a challenging relationship with your mother. You might make a card that represents the challenges with your mother. And then you might make another card that represents the loving, compassionate relationship you have with her. So you can have more than one card for a specific person in your life. Okay. This is a card, Ellen DeGeneres, when she came out on Time magazine, I cut up the cover and redid it in a different format, so to capture that. Okay. You can also represent in your community suit actual communities in which you have lived that have made a mark on you. And I lived for quite a few years in a town in upstate Pennsylvania called Wellsboro. And so these are scenes from tourist brochures and things about Wellsboro, because it's still a very important part of my life and people I love that still live there. Anybody have a community card you want to share?
So you can put groups on as well. This is my family of origin card. And so this is me like in my 20s with my parents and my two brothers. So that was the core family, and me with my two nieces and nephews a little bit later when they got a little older. So and I have individual cards for these people as well, but when I draw this card, they speak together, and I've drawn it quite a lot, and it's very powerful to draw that card. Sacred places belong in this suit because we have relationships with places, just like we have relationships with people. This is one of my favorite places in the world, Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health in the Western Massachusetts Berkshires. Yes, and it's interesting when you draw a place card, how the place actually can speak to you. It's very, very powerful. Mm-hmm. My Cena card. We all have Cena cards. Yes. Yeah. Anybody have one? Anybody else? Oh, I see hands raised.
Val has one.
Nope, we can't hear you. Wait a minute, we can't hear you. Let's hear you.
There we go. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This is a card that I made several years ago when my neighbor Jill was making her bat mitzvah. And it's one of those images that I pulled because really the likeness of her is uncanny. And it's exactly how she looked at that time and still does. And it was there was a gathering of women of all generations who gathered to share a card or something, stories about her. And I made this card for her of all kinds of different people from different generations. And it was so delightful and so perfect. It was the perfect gift. You know how sometimes just the gift of a soul collage means more than any gift you could possibly purchase. And
Right.
this was just perfect. So I loved it. It's one of my favorite cards because I always remember her.
So you gave her.
I gave her a copy of it. So what I do, and when I gift cards to people, is I make a photo color copy and put it on a card, and then usually write the note on the back. But but I want to keep the original, you know, for myself, so it's still part of my collection. I gave her a copy of the card.
Some collagers do it differently. That in the reverse, they give the original to the person for whom the card is made and keep a color copy for themselves. Yeah,
that would make sense too. I don't know why I've always done it this way, but anyway,
yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
And that's just about the only time that's like the only time, wait a minute. That's like the only time that it's all kind of acceptable to photocopy. Soul Collage does not advocate the copying
Yes.
of any of our cards or images. I just want to put that out there as a trainer.
Yeah.
We do not advocate the copying for any reason. I just want to, that's the official stance from Soul Collage Inc.
Yep.
I saw Trudy and Evelyn had your hands up when Dot asked if there were other community cards wanting to be shared. Did you guys want to unmute yourself? Evelyn, you want to go?
Yeah. Well, I can't say that this is a community card because when I learned about Soul Collage, I got really excited. I ordered a kit, but I don't have the whole suits thing down yet. I just made a few cards in my first sort of when I pulled out the materials. So I have not yet separated them into suits. I only have 3 cards. I'm just really, really new. So here's one that I made.
Do you want to tell us who you made that for or to honor? Or do you?
It's really it's representing the sort of trying to pull together my creative and my spiritual side. So this, of course, reflects the creativity. And owl is just sort of one of my totems, one of my personal symbols. And then the candle represents, and the woman in a sort of meditative pose represents.
This may be more of a committee card representing what part of you.
Very good. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Then there I go. I have a committee card.
Yeah.
It's a little confusing because all the suits begin with C and they all begin with com, and it's very confusing.
Yeah.
Tina always said that if she could have done it over, she would have not named them that, which tells me that it's just a name. You can call them whatever you want. But for the sake of sticking to the Soul Collage protocol, community. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people call committee my inner tribe, and some people call community my outer tribe, or people I've loved, or something like that. You can call the suit.
That's a good way to differentiate them.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
can call them whatever you want.
If that card that you held up and shared, Tracy, really represented to you what you see, let's say you had a sister, then it would be a community card. But because you identify those things as parts of yourself, then it would be more of a committee card, parts of you.
That was Evelyn, I think.
Oh, Evelyn. Okay.
Yeah. So Allison, before we get to Trudy, Allison is asking, can you clarify about gifting cards? When I did my training, it was recommended that cards were not gifted to others, and that is why I threw in that bit about how Soul Collage Inc. does not advocate the copying, trading, or bartering of our cards for any reason. That's just the official stance. We're not going to say anything more about that. That's just the official legalese stance. So we want to adhere to that as much as we can. Okay. Trudy had something to share when we were talking about community. I don't want to forget.
Yes.
Did you want to tell us something about this?
Yes, can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah. This is a very good friend of mine. It's a community card, and this man made pyramids from all sorts of material. And where the big picture is where he is building a big pyramid, an open one. He was a very good friend, but he was also a guide for me in my development, my spiritual development. And he died much too young. So it's really, when I see this card, I can feel his energy and I'm touched again. Yes, it's really a community card.
Yes. I often recommend to people that making a card for someone who is important in our lives but then passes is, I think, a very helpful part of a grieving process, very therapeutic. When my younger sister passed back in 2011, I ended up making almost like a mini deck for her. I think there are 7 or 8 cards that I made for her that represented parts of her, who she was, and parts of her community, and symbols and archetypes that were very important to her. And so those cards just really sort of pull me into a close relationship with her and the memories of her. Okay, you ready to move on?
That's very, very good suggestion.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Now I'm going to see if I can do this together. I don't know if I can there.
There you go.
These are animal companion cards. And I have in my deck one that represents each of the animals and one that represents each of the chakras. And so Sina provides a guided meditation that some of us have found very helpful in identifying our animal companions. And a different animal usually lives at each of our inner chakras, so the inner energy centers up and down our spine. So this is my first chakra, the red chakra, and the animal there is the honeybee. And I remember when we were doing the meditation, I kept being very frustrated because nothing was showing up, and I wanted to have an animal for my first chakra, and I found myself just kept going like this. And as we were doing the meditation, Sina said, if you're not seeing something, it might be a really tiny animal like an insect. So get down and look on the ground or look around on the wildflowers. And then it like dawned on me that I was swatting this honeybee away from my face, and it was trying to just kind of come and pay attention to me. And so the honeybee represents that connection with work and ancestors and how we make our living. Okay, animal companions. We're only about 15 minutes away from our 5:30 ending time, so. Some people don't do anything with the animal companions. They find it a little bit too new agey, and other people find it extremely meaningful, and find it helpful to really focus on those chakras in terms of what might be blocked, energy that might be blocked and might need to be healed or opened in order to work through something that's going on in your life. So.
Another way that animal companions show up if guided imagery isn't your thing is, you may already have a connection with an animal that you've always been drawn to or attracted to all your life. Like my dolphin, like I don't know where that came from. I just have always loved them, wanted to go play with them, and that's just one of my animal companions. So you may think back on your life, what animals have you been drawn to? Or another way that animal companions make themselves known to us is by multiple sightings over a period of time. Like I remember a time in my life when I saw crows like everywhere, in my front yard, in a parking lot, wherever I went on a walk, there were crows. And now I don't see them hardly at all. So I paid attention to that. And then I did a little research, like, what is it about crows and what message might they have for me? It's very powerful medicine to pay attention to.
Yeah. And some people will just represent animal medicine that comes into their lives on a card. Last week, I live in a very urban setting for central Pennsylvania, and went around the corner last week, and there was a young female bald eagle in the back alley eating a dead animal of some sort. Beautiful
Wow.
big bird. And you know, I recognized it had to be an eagle, and then I looked it up on Google Images and found that it was a young juvenile female eagle. And so, you know, some people would have said, okay, Dot, pay attention. What does eagle energy mean? And that's going on in your life now. And maybe you need to make a card in order to invite her into your deck and as something that will speak to you at some point in the future. Okay, then the fourth suit is counsel, archetypes that are meaningful to us. And this is one of the archetypes that Sina suggested that we might all include in our decks, and this is the light bearer. And this card has 3 different images of light bearers. It has the male image, the female image, and the child image. And so, you know, some people have several cards that represent being a light bearer, and you know, some people have made cards that show themselves as a light bearer to the world. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can represent the image of the light bearer on a card. Council cards that anybody wants to share.
This is my Mother Earth, or Gaia. There's a dolphin on it too. I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think this artwork is by Josephine Wall. If you've heard of her, she has beautiful. And then I have a card in my deck for each of the seasons, because they represent not just weather to me, but the archetypal energy. So this is the archetypal theme or energy of capital W, winter, which happens to be one of my favorite seasons, that time of resting, going within, waiting for the seeds to germinate under the snow. And I even added a tiny little red cardinal to signify that spring is coming, even though it's winter. So seasons, think of the seasons when you think of archetypes.
Yeah.
Sina also suggested that everyone have a card for a fool and a card for death in this council suit, because those are archetypes that no one escapes.
And she also suggested we make a card for a happy child. Some of us were blessed in having a happy childhood, but as some of the therapists tell us, it's never too late to have a happy childhood, and making a happy childhood for yourself in the kinds of things that you want to celebrate about the child within, and how you take care of her and celebrate her.
And that would go in the committee suit as a part of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trudy has her hand up.
Go ahead.
This is my happy child.
Look, she just says happy child, doesn't she?
Yes. And then I have a card for the death, but that's not out of the plastic. Maybe.
Hold it back a little bit. Yeah, we can see that. Thank you.
It's Egyptian.
Yeah. Sometimes when we're working with archetypes and other images, we get very serious. And so this is a card that reminds me about joy and silliness. Came off a birthday card that someone gave me with the pug licking or kissing and the little white dog that just says happiness to me. So we can find images that are sometimes just sort of silly and speak to us when they come into a reading about where's the joy in your life and where's the humor, and how are you using humor to really help yourself in your life. At the last retreat that we did in June for Kaleidosol, Catherine Anderson with her images talked about portals. And one of the things she suggested was that we could make cards where the doorways would open up. And she has a book that's all specifically about portals and pathways. And so obviously when I put this card in the clear bag, or the, to protect it, it appears like this. If I wanted to, I guess I could put it in the bag with this open so that I could see the inside as well. But typically if I pull it in a reading, then I open it and lay it out so that I get the full image with the card. So that's a different way of thinking about a card with multiple layers on it. So it can speak to us, could be with closed doors or with the door open or half open or kind of thing. And you can put all sorts of images in terms of layers within the portal as well.
And even if you don't have access to Catherine's book, there are plenty of images in magazines of doors and windows. You could actually just take one of those and cut out the door and put something else underneath it. Or a window, put something else behind it. That's a really cool thing. And if anybody new is watching, I know most of you live aren't new, but lots of people will be watching this later. If anybody's new, if you go to YouTube and put in Catherine Anderson, how to make a soul collage card, she has a really great 20-minute video where it's just her and her card making supplies, and she really thoroughly explains how to lay out a card. So if anybody new is watching, you would find that helpful, or just email me and I can send you the link.
Yeah. One of the websites that's available that gets you an opportunity to see other people's cards is Daily Oasis, which they send you an email on a daily basis where someone has sent their card into them and given them permission to use their card, and then it goes out over the internet in that way. So that's something that if you want to display your cards and share them with other collagers, you can email the card to them, and then they'll put it in their daily Oasis. And Anne Marie at Kaleidosol also has a Yahoo users group that is a place where people can post their cards and include their I am one who statements if they want to do that.
And we have our monthly free newsletter called Soul Songs, where we have a different theme every month, and I send out a Yahoo group notice inviting people to share cards on that theme. So that's, if you're not on that Soul Songs email list, you want to get on that. So it's every month there's lots and lots of cards shared on a certain theme to give you more ideas. And the Daily Oasis thing, I don't think they have a website that you can go and sign up. I think you have to.
It has to be email.
You have to email them. So, and I don't have that right off the top of my head. So if you're interested in that, I will add it. I will add it to in the members only audio library where you go to watch this again. I will add Johnny's email there. Yeah.
And then there are the transpersonal cards. This is just an example of my source card. And different people have different images that speak to them about source or divine spirit. Some people never make a source card. Some people make a source card and then a few months later, a few years later, make another one because they found an image that says it to them more specifically. And so that's an opportunity for folks to just explore, what does source mean to you when you hear the word source? And for some, it's in people. For others, it's in nature. For some, it's in the macro level, and others it's in the micro level. So whatever it means to you.
And then again, if there's anybody new watching, the source card does not go in any of the suits. It represents the one the one that holds all those many parts and pieces and knitters of you. So you don't do readings with it, you don't journal with it, it just is there.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. And along with the source card, Sina suggested a witness card and also a soul essence card. And the witness is the objective observer of your soul collage process and your life, and non-judgmental, just observing. And then the soul essence card is really how you and your life represent divine spirit or source in your life. And I sometimes describe to people in classes that if somebody knew all of us on this card, on this call, and we laid out our soul essence cards, they might be able to match us up with our soul essence card, that it would be so indicative of who they know us to be, that those images would say, oh, this is Dot's soul essence card, this is Anne Marie's soul essence card. So that's when you know that your soul essence card really is communicating who you are to other people when they see it. So that's an opportunity for different kinds of, the transpersonal cards, as Anne Marie said, don't speak to us. They just are sort of protectors and guides of the process. Does anybody have any questions before we close out? Any other cards that you wanted to share that didn't fit neatly into our discussion?
Yeah, some cards are mystery cards.
Yeah.
I see Kathy is holding up something there.
Yes, this is a shadow card. I guess it would be a for me it's a sound shadow, and it made me realize how much sound interferes with I mean, it just makes me go crazy, because in my family, the really important messages were nonverbal, and if there's too much noise, it covers up the important stuff. And so it's just a good reminder for me that, you know, I really don't have to listen for those messages anymore. Nobody's around anymore. So, you know, I have to learn to deal with sound differently. So this was a very significant card for me. So
very powerful.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sometimes people keep their shadow cards sort of private, and we think that, you know, I don't want to be, you know, sharing or showing shadow cards to others. But sometimes when we pull them in a reading, the insight that we get from them in juxtaposition with other cards can be really, really powerful. And often when somebody else is sort of helping to facilitate the reading, might ask a question that just blows us out of the water and is exactly what we need in terms of the wisdom in our lives at that point. So shadow cards are a real important part, I think, of our deck, and useful in that way.
Evelyn, did you have a question? I saw your hand a minute ago. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to share a card. My third. I've only ever made 3 cards. So, I don't know if you can see that.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was just, you know, trying it out. And,
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a dog. Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for sharing that.
Was there something you wanted to say about that card, Evelyn?
Your dog wants to say something.
My dog wants to say. Not really. I don't know. I look forward to learning more about the process.
Yeah.
Because I've always loved collage, and when I heard about soul collage, I thought, well, that was made for me. So.
Yes. Yeah.
I think we can all
feel that way.
I remember that same thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We all feel that way. Sina must have had me in mind when she made soul collage. Yeah. I have an opportunity. I learned about soul collage through a workshop at my Unitarian Universalist congregation. And often when I serve as a worship associate, I will talk about soul collage and certainly invite people to join our monthly group that we have on the first Saturday of the month. But people often have said to me after they've heard me a dozen times, this is really an important part of your spiritual process. And I say, yes, it is. You know, since 2005, it's been a very, very significant part of my life and my spiritual practice. And so, and I often when I'm teaching or when I'm sharing soul collage with people, I refer them not only to the soulcollage.com, but also to Kaleidosol because of just the wealth of information that is there sort of in a repository that people can access to help them in their own practice. But the best thing about Kaleidosol is coming to a retreat. So.
Well, thank you, Dot, for all the preparation and thought and love that went into this. I think people are all smiling. They've all gotten a notebook full of good ideas from you tonight.
Yeah.
Did you have a closing for us, or should we just say thank you?
I often, when I am getting ready to do something with soul collage, use this to the many and the one. Thank you for these images which have come to share our journey. Open our minds and spirits to receive the messages and the meanings you have for us as we ask a question of you, the many and the one. Guide us to see the many and the one in these images. We honor the many and the one created within us and beyond us. We are the ones who were created, are creating, and will be created anew and again within this circle of love. So might it be.
Amen.
Namaste.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming live, and thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions, just give Dot or I a holler. I'll include her email as well for you.
Great. That'd be wonderful.
Thank you,
Thanks
everybody.
for coming, everybody.
Night.